In case you missed the memo, spooky season is in full force on this channel. I love Halloween and I love creepy episodes of shows, and I've been planning videos for Halloween since March of this year. If you did miss it, I'll leave a link to my last spooky season video in the description of this one, so you can check it out after you watch this one. To say that I'm totally hyped for the Halloween season would be an absolute understatement. I am 10 out of 10 pumped, dare I say ecstatic about spooky season. Why am I so hyped, you may ask? Good question. I have a plethora of memories from my childhood of seeing scary or creepy episodes of shows that would leave me shook. Bear in mind, I was the kind of kid that was afraid of everything, but that rush I would get from watching a scary show was just ridiculous. The feeling of waking up in the middle of the night after a nightmare about a show that I had watched was kind of bittersweet. At the time, I hated it because I was terrified, but the adrenaline rush of waking up with my heart pumping out of my chest was absolutely mind-blowing. It's a rush that's almost hard to explain. As someone who's almost like the exact opposite of an adrenaline junkie, it's a feeling that I truly enjoy because I get that fun adrenaline rush without having to actually put myself in any danger. There's something really tantalizing about spooky cartoons because when you're watching a children's cartoon, the last thing you expect is to get spooked, and some of these shows do a really good job of freaking you out and shaking you to your core. That's why today, on our nostalgic walk down memory lane, we are looking at a creepy episode of one of our favorite 90s Nicktoons, Hey Arnold. Before we get into it, do me a solid and drop a like on this video if you enjoy it, and give praise to the YouTube algorithm in hopes that it promotes this video. Hey Arnold was a show that is really special. It never really portrayed situations that were unlike real life. Whereas Rugrats was about talking babies, Rocko's Modern Life was about talking animals, and Ah Real Monsters was about real monsters, Hey Arnold was about normal kids dealing with normal situations. It was pretty rare for Hey Arnold to deviate from real world issues, but when they did, things would get pretty intense. This is one of those few episodes where things got really intense. The episode we're looking at today gave me full-on nightmares when I was a little kid. It's an episode that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Specifically, we are looking at Season 1, Episode 8, The Haunted Train. The episode begins with a menacing glimpse at the haunted train emitting smoke as the shot dissolves into Grandpa Phil buying himself, Arnold, and Gerald some ice cream from the Jolly Ollie Man. Arnold and Gerald tell Grandpa about how bored they are because they've played literally every single game in the house. At that exact moment, a subway train drives by, which prompts Grandpa to tell the story about how he used to work for the railroad. Now, I put quotes around that because, as you probably know already, Grandpa Phil is known to stretch the truth in his stories quite a bit. He tells the story of how about 40 years ago, Engine 25 was heading back to the station when the conductor went mad and drove the train off the tracks. Legend has it, no one ever saw the conductor or the train ever again.
To the very most southern point.
You mean?
That's right.
Wow, he drove all the way to the South Pole?
No, he drove the train straight down to the fiery underworld.
Every year on the anniversary of its last ride, the train comes back to the station to pick up unsuspecting passengers who are hypnotized and drawn in by a blinding white light, only to be met with a peculiar smell.
I'll tell you what it is. It's the smell of...
Socks?
No, fire and brimstone.
Then, the passengers hear ear-splitting, shrieking, inhuman music, and finally, the train enters the zone of darkness, where they feel the heat of the flames and are met by the red, fiery demon himself.
You know what tonight is, don't you? It's the 40th anniversary! I'd sure hate to be at the old train station tonight. Oh, the one on 53rd past Livingston. You know, next to the tire shop there.
Arnold, Gerald, and Helga make plans to meet at the train station that night, 1 hour after the streetlights go out. When they get there, we find that the train station has been completely abandoned and boarded up. This place looks like no one has stepped foot in it for years. The three kids wait around until the clock strikes midnight to see if the train shows up. To pass the time, Arnold and Gerald have a nice little duet with Arnold on the harmonica and Gerald singing.
They say he lost his mind, went crazy on that day.
ran his train right off the tracks and drove it straight to... Hey!
Helga gets angry from waiting for so long and having to listen to their song. As she's popping off, we hear the eerie sound of a train honking in the distance. The building starts to shake as we see none other than Engine 25 approaching the station on the 40th anniversary of the day that it flew off the tracks and departed for the fiery underworld. It comes to a screeching halt and stops in front of them.
White light. It pulled us on.
We're the victims of forces we can't possibly comprehend.
Just like that, Arnold, Helga, and Gerald find themselves alone on the old dilapidated train car that looks as if it hasn't been maintained in 40 years. They try to leave, but the doors slam shut before they can get out. As the train drives away, they are greeted by none other than the putrid scent of rotten eggs, just like in the story.
Do you hear what I hear? I mean that horrible ear-splitting, impossible, inhuman music?
Helga, who, might I add, was a skeptic and didn't believe in any of this, starts to completely freak out and lose what little cool she had to begin with. As the train continues to go down the bumpy tracks, the lights go out as the kids prepare to face what Grandpa Phil called the Zone of Darkness.
This is it! I can feel the flames of the dark underworld flowing down the back of my neck!
Oddly enough, Brainy shows up out of nowhere, but he doesn't stay for long as the kids open the door and straight up yeet his ass out of the moving train. As soon as they close the door, the kids are met with fire in a scene that looks identical to what Grandpa Phil described in his story. Arnold gets the bright idea to grab the fire hose out of an emergency box on the train wall. Now, can we just talk about this for a sec? I'm not even going to question the fact that there's a full-blown fire hose on a passenger train seemingly connected to the wall, which in and of its own leads me to a plethora of other questions. I'll accept the cartoon logic of that one and humor the idea. Rather, how the hell is this gonna help anything? Let's just pretend for a second that they actually did ride a train into the depths of the earth. How would spraying water help at all? I get that Arnold had to act quick and work with what he had at the moment, but spraying a fire hose into the depths of the earth kinda sounds like putting a child-sized band-aid on a Bowie knife-sized stab wound. Regardless, rant over. The doors open up and Arnold sprays the fiery demon directly with the hose, but we come to find out that it isn't a demon after all, and it's actually a blue-collar worker just doing his job.
Hey! What did you do that for?
At that exact moment, a guy whose chin looks suspiciously like a pair of testicles barges into the train car, saying that only steel mill workers are allowed on this train. Arnold and his friends come to the realization that they aren't in the fiery underworld on a haunted train, rather that they're at a steel mill on a train provided for relief workers.
This train isn't haunted?
Haunted? Oh, no, not that story again. This train is for relief workers.
The ball-chinned conductor is quick to answer all of the different signs from the story. The sulfur, which led to the rotten egg smell, the old wiring, which led to the lights going out.
The music! I've never heard anything so horrible. It was like torture.
I thought my eardrums were going to explode.
Well, I suppose some people don't appreciate the polka. Okay? Does that explain everything?
I don't know if you noticed that awkward change in animation there, but just to be completely clear, that wasn't a weird jump cut from me editing or anything like that. Midway through that guy's sentence, the background that had absolutely no fire just spontaneously combusted and started burning. It's like the animators realized partway into the scene that they forgot to include fire, but it was just a little bit too late for them to turn back, so they just threw it in there once they realized, knowing that of course none of the kids watching this show would even notice. I hate to nitpick these old beloved nostalgic cartoons, but one other thing drove me nuts with this scene. Just listen to the weird change in audio at this clip.
Let's get you kids on the right train home.
Jeez.
That last line there sounded like a completely different voice actor. It sticks out like a sore pink thumb, and I just find it hilarious that they threw it in. It was completely unnecessary too, like he could have said that entire line without that awkward
Jeez.
at the end, and it wouldn't have made even the slightest difference. But they did it anyways. After the kids leave, Grandpa Phil picks them up from the train station.
A fire extinguisher against the fires of the underworld, eh?
Yeah, Grandpa, I thought the same exact thing, like a kid-sized band-aid on a Bowie knife stab wound.
There is no haunted train.
Well, now I didn't say that.
But then we see the Packard drive away as Brainy is sitting on a bench watching Engine 25 pass by, only this time, things are just a bit different.
Sometimes late at night, you can hear the whistle wail with a squeaky, screechy sound, like a wheel gone off the rail. And up in the smoky clouds, you can almost recognize the ghost of a crazy engineer with fire similar eyes.
Man, I don't know what it is about that ending, but to this very day, it leaves me feeling generally uneasy. As a kid, I would straight up dread watching this episode whenever it played on Nickelodeon. It's a good episode, don't get me wrong, but there's just something about that ending that whenever I watched it as a kid made me feel complete dread in the pit of my stomach. Something about hearing the conductor's deep voice singing and seeing him take that train off the rails always left me feeling straight up terrified and completely unnerved. Like I said before, there's just something truly tantalizing about getting spooked by a children's cartoon, since odds are that's the last place you'd expect a good scare to come from. There is one final thing that I can't help but wonder, and that would be, how did Grandpa Phil know? Did he actually work for the railroad at one point, or did he hear the story from a steel mill worker? And like, what are the odds of all this happening? Like, sure, the smell of rotten eggs can be expected since he knew that the train went to the steel mill, but the odds of the lights actually going out, just like in his story, are actually kind of low. Even lower, though, are the odds of the inhuman music that was actually the conductor playing the accordion. How did he know that all of those things were going to happen? Or was it just dumb luck? I guess we might never know the answer to those questions, but I do know that this is a top shelf episode of Hey Arnold, and I'd love to hear your guys' feedback down in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this video, and if there are any other spooky episodes you'd like me to cover while we are still in spooky season. No guarantees, but I'll definitely keep an eye out for your guys' recommendations. Be sure to drop a like if you enjoyed this video and give praise to the YouTube algorithm that it hopefully promotes this video to everyone else, and as always, thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.